Hey folks, welcome to another Maintenance Monday. I'm glad you came and joined me for the subject of batteries, okay? And this is a hot topic for a lot of people because some people swear by a certain battery, some people don't swear by a certain battery. Some people don't really even care, okay? So as long as it provides power, that's all that matters. Again, we're going to use this time to just do a basic overview of what batteries are, what they're designed to do, and what their basic purpose is. Okay, so come on in and let's talk about batteries. Believe me, it can be quite a task to learn about batteries, okay? So what I want to do is I want to try and simplify it, make it fun, make it informative, but shorten it, okay? So here's what we're going to do. Let me start off with, let me ask you a question, all right? I'm going to pose a question for you. And the question is, do you know how many of your RV systems use 12-volt power? Not very many people know. So let me give you a list. We're going to just start right off with that, okay? So, majority of your RV refrigerator. Okay, if you have a two-way or three-way RV fridge, it's going to use 12-volt power all the time. Your carbon monoxide and LP detectors use a lot of 12-volt power. Water heaters, furnaces, some of the newer ovens that are on board that have LED lights, water pumps, tank heaters, electric waste valves versus a physical hand-pulling valve. RV interior lighting, so all your ceiling lighting is most likely going to be 12-volt power. Charging devices off-grid, cell phones, batteries, flashlights, things like that, you name it, charges from your batteries. Automatic locking systems, if you have a high-end motor coach and you've got a keyless entry that locks all your doors, guess what? 12-volt power. Power steps, if you open the door and steps come out automatically, 12-volt power. Specifically have batteries that are hooked up to your emergency breakaway switches. So if you get disconnected from your truck or your tow vehicle, whatever you're towing with, and your breakaway gets disconnected, then it triggers your brakes. If your batteries aren't any good, now your trailer is not going to stop in a quick manner. There's power disconnects. That's a big one because if you, on your big coaches that have a button that connects or disconnects power from your batteries to your entire coach, it requires battery power to connect. If you do not have the amount of battery power that the solenoid needs, it won't connect, thus causing a problem and you will not have any power. This does not include the manual switches that you would turn on a cheaper version. And then any other miscellaneous items installed by the owner. You know what operates some and not all of your RV systems, because I could keep going for hours telling you what systems work and what they don't with 12-volt power. So let's actually go back and talk about what a battery is. A battery takes cosmic powers and brings it down into an itty-bitty living space. Right there. What?
Phenomenal cosmic powers. Itty-bitty living space. This is your nod to Robin Williams.
Hey, all jokes aside, a battery is a storage device that you take with you. You move small amounts of power with you as you go so you can power small systems. You don't need to power large systems, you're trying to power small systems. Anyway, okay, so how do we charge our batteries? That's the question a lot of people ask, or how does my batteries charge? And it basically gets its power from, you could get it solar, could be wind if you have a windmill or some sort, 120 volt AC power through shoreline hookup through an extension cord, or a generator if you have an onboard generator, portable generator. And then an optional source is an alternator from the tow vehicle through a charge line through the 7-way plug, or the alternator from the motorhome motor itself as it's running. Okay, so let's actually go into the different types of batteries and what they're called. And I'm going to throw some information out there don't worry, I will elaborate more on what a lot of these terms are, but I just want to give you an overview right now. This is to introduce you to batteries, okay? So here we go. Flooded lead acid, all right? So a flooded lead acid is also known as an FLA. That is a standard lead and sulfuric acid base that is together. So what they do is they take a lead plate and then they stack them in there, and they come in 6 and 12 volt varieties, some bigger depending on what you're trying to power. So they are the least expensive for the battery type. They include them with every RV you buy, okay? And it's going to be what they call a deep cycle battery. So it's going to be in one, usually it's either a group 24 or 27. And again, we'll go into more depth of what that means. They're usually very, very heavy, okay? So they weigh a lot. They're going to be somewhere between the 60 and 80 pound range depending on the size of the battery. And they even go higher than that, where they're 120, 130, 150 pounds or more. So you may have heard the term heavy as lead. Well, this is why it's so heavy. The outside housing is plastic, the inside's lead, okay? And then they fill it with water and acid, so it gets even heavier. So you also are required to do maintenance on these batteries. Again, we'll talk about maintenance, but just know that you're supposed to check the water level, you're supposed to check the electrolyte level, you're supposed to check to make sure that it is still in healthy condition. Those are all things that you need to do. It is filled with sulfuric acid, and if acid gets in your eyes, on your skin, or on your clothes, it can cause harm, cause skin damage, cause irreversible eye damage, and it will rot your clothing, and it will do it quickly. Okay? You should not discharge your battery below 50% state of charge, which means if you have 0 to 100, 100 is 12.6 volts, you cannot go past 50% of the charge of that battery. Sulfuric crystals will then build up on your lead plates, and those lead plates then cause a problem with being able to have that chemical reaction between the acid and the lead when you charge it. So these are things you need to be aware of if you're using a lead acid battery. They also have the least amount of charge and discharge cycles compared to other batteries in the higher end or higher range in the class of 12 volts. So what that means is that you generally, out of a standard lead acid battery, you charge it all the time, and you're always on the charger, and you're never off the charger, and it's never discharging, then you basically are going to get between 700 and 800 cycles. Each cycle is a discharge and a charge. Unless you're constantly charging it, then the 1 24-hour period is going to be a cycle. So your battery's in a constant state of charge all the time, being topped off and never allowed to float or cycle through the charge cycle. Again, we'll talk about that in a minute. It will actually cause the same result as a fully discharged battery sitting without a charge. It is actually doing damage to the battery, and it shortens the life. So basically, you look at it, if it's on the charger for 365 days a year, then that's 365 cycles. And you now start adding them up, and when you get to 700 to 800 cycles, that battery's toast. This is why a lot of people are coming in once every 2 years, and they're buying new batteries. So now that we talked about the FLA, or flooded lead acid, let's move to the next category, and that is a SLA, known as the sealed lead acid. Okay, and that's what we consider maintenance free, because they are sealed batteries. They cannot leak. They do not have an issue with needing to be straight up and down when you mount them, and they can be mounted on their sides. They can be mounted upside down. They can be mounted in all kinds of ways and arrangements, because they use either absorbent glass mat, and it's placed in between each lead cell, or it's through a gel process that they turn the acid and electrolyte mixture into a gel. and puts that in between each plate, then they can seal it. So it doesn't off-gas like a flooded lead acid is. It's a closed unit. Those are more expensive than a flooded cell, okay, so it costs more. They are completely sealed, so the electrolyte doesn't need to be checked, and it generally can't leak out. Now, there is a pressure relief valve that only allows it to go one way. So if for some reason your charging system fails and overcharges, it won't explode. It will just pop the relief valve and allow them to expand. But it doesn't do the same thing as an FLA does. Just like the flooded lead acid battery, the sealed lead acid battery really shouldn't go below 50% state of charge. However, because of the nature and how the liquid or fluid is suspended within the battery, meaning it doesn't have free movement, it doesn't have the same nature as a flooded lead acid would. Meaning when the flooded lead acid discharges past 50% state of charge, you're going to get more sulfuric crystals building up on your lead plates because those crystals can move through the water easier. Whereas if you have glass mat or gel, it takes more time for them to make their way through. It basically is slowing down the sulfur crystal process. So that's why you can do it in small occasions, in short term. But you should really be thinking about charging it back up once you've hit about 30%. That would be like the bare minimum threshold. So they can take a little more abuse, and it makes it a little bit more user-friendly, but they have a much higher cost. Remember we talked about the FLA has a 700 to 800 cycles for discharge and charge. Well, with an AGM or gel through a maintenance-free battery, sealed lead acid, you get about 1,200 to 1,500 cycles. So it's almost doubled based on that. But your price is almost doubled too. So there's a trade-off. So next on our category is lithium. All right, let's talk about lithium. And we're just going to touch some basic points, but I'll elaborate on certain things that you really need to understand. Because if you're sitting on the fence on whether you want lithium or not, stay tuned. We're going to talk more about lithium. We're going to talk more about solar. We're going to talk about what you need to do when you want a boondock. That is going to be part of the subject. Not in this video, but we are going to talk about it, so stay tuned. All right, so moving into lithium here. They are the most expensive. You're talking about $800 to $1,000 per battery, okay? Don't skimp. I will talk more about this, but don't skimp on quality. You want good quality. But they are also about 1/3 the weight of a sealed lead acid or flooded lead acid battery. So if you're talking 60 to 80 pounds for a lead acid battery, now you're talking 30 to 40 pounds roughly lighter, sometimes total, depending on the manufacturer that builds it. They're completely sealed, so they're not going to leak. You're not going to have any problems, so they are maintenance free. They can be charged up to 100 amps in 2 hours if you have the correct battery and the correct charging equipment. So they are fast charging, so you can discharge them fast and you can recharge them fast. Think about how fast your cell phone is. You can get all day power with it and it charges in an hour and a half. Something to be said. Can be mounted in any position. Again, it's sealed. And they can also be discharged as close to zero state of charge. Technically, you don't want to go zero, but as long as you have 5 to 10% left state of charge, you're good. They also have the most discharge and charge cycles. So you're looking at, for the first chunk of charge cycles is going to be 3,000 cycles for a lithium battery. Okay, so yes, it has the highest upfront cost and all the other things that you need to connect to it to make it work properly. But in the end, you're going to have the best power you can get. Then keeping that in mind, that's 3,000 cycles from 0 to 100. And then once you pass that 3,000 cycles, now you doesn't just die, you get now it degrades. So what's going to happen is you're going to take that 3,000 to 5,000 cycles, and now you may not get 100% out of it. You might only get 80% charge. That's still a hell of a lot more than what you had if you were talking about a lead acid battery. Okay. Here's what you need to understand about some of the cons, though. Okay. If you swap a lithium battery with instead of a flooded lead acid or a sealed lead acid battery, then you need to change the charging equipment. Okay, this is very important because the charging equipment, if you have an inverter charger or a converter charger, it's not compatible. And some of the new ones, some of these other companies are trying to integrate these things into where it's just a flip of a switch, where it's either SLAs and FLAs, or it's SLAs and lithium. And if you flip the wrong switch or something gets bumped or something happens, now you have a catastrophe on your hand. It literally can cause the battery to blow up if you're charging it at the wrong rate, or if it's doing something it shouldn't be doing. The other problem is that if you use an inverter charger that's set up for AGM batteries, you're only going to get 80% state of charge out of that lithium. So it's not really going to give you that full potential. So it's no good. You also need to understand that make sure that the battery charger doesn't have a desulfation mode. All right, and what that means is that it charges at a high, fast rate that basically sloughs off all those sulfation crystals. Okay, so that gets rid of it. Well, if you do that to a lithium battery, it's going to short things out. There are limiters that are in the battery to help monitor the flow of electricity in and out. That shorts, and then you get full meltdown. That's basically what happened with Samsung years ago when it came to the ban of Samsung phones on planes. I don't need to go through that in this video. You can look it up for yourself. But that's basically what happened. It was shorting it out, and the battery would then spontaneously combust. Connecting a lithium battery directly to a vehicle alternator can also cause overheating and damage to either the battery or the alternator through high current. So if you're going to charge your battery on a trailer that's lithium or through a motorhome, you need to make sure that you have a DC to DC controller charger. Maintenance year-round. You do not want to, again, charge your batteries all the time. You want to have a discharge cycle. You want to monitor. Again, anything that is a maintenance-free AGM or gel is not susceptible to this, okay? And you should have a specific charger to run those batteries. And they will do what they call charge cycle, which is 13.7 plus or minus volts. Then it does a high charge, high rate charging for 14.5 volts for a certain short window of time, and then it goes into a float mode. And that float mode is roughly 13.2 volts, and that's where it sits. And that maintains, it's a battery maintainer. That's the type of converter you want to have, all right? Something that does that. An inverter charger, same thing. You need to have it so it at least has a charge and a float. Those are two very vital things. The maintenance side, year-round, you want to be checking your batteries if you have a standard flooded lead acid every 30 days, okay? And especially if you're full-time and you're charging all the time, okay? Or you have it sit charging at your house all the time. Winterizing, there's two things a lot of times, especially coming into the winter months, which we're not that far away to fall. We're going to start winterizing RVs soon. So what you need to understand is when you winterize a battery, the best thing to do is take it out of the coach, store it with a battery tender separately. If you have two batteries, you have two battery tenders, set them in the garage floor, and they'll maintain them, okay? If you do not keep a charge above about 12.2 volts or higher on your batteries, they'll freeze. What keeps the battery from freezing is charging it, okay? but not overcharging it. In my opinion, all of the RVs that you buy that are kind of the entry level up to probably a rate around the $150,000 mark, whether it's a trailer or motorhome, they're generally going to come with the simple single stage chargers. And those chargers, plain and simple, all they're meant to do is hit 13.6 volts to 13.8 volts, boom, done, and all it does is charge. Now, it's not a problem if you're only using it sparingly. Now, if you're going out for a week at a time and you sit there and charge for a week, not a problem. If you're going to do like a big cross-country trip and you're going to be gone for a month or two, then it might be more of a problem. If you're going to be full-timing on it and you're already full-timing on it, big problem, because that's how you boil the water off your batteries. Okay? So my suggestion is go in, find the type of charger you have. There's a couple of different types. There's the all-in-ones that are in underneath. If you look at your circuit breaker panel, there'll be like perforated holes or louvers under the circuit breaker panel. That was an all-in-one. So that's where it's located. If you don't have that type of circuit breaker panel, then it's what they generally would consider a deck mount, which will be a standalone system. And you find out what model you have. If it has the float option, charge option, great. Multi-stage is what they call it. If it's not a multi-stage, I would highly recommend upgrading. They're between $350 and about $450 depending on what you buy. Okay, so I know there's you have a lot of questions. I'm just giving you kind of a broad spectrum overview on this stuff through section 1. Section 2, just to give you kind of an update on that, which will be coming next week, we're going to go into in-depth of choosing a battery. What battery is best for you? So we're going to talk a little bit about power theory and how to choose those types of batteries. What's going to be best for you, and we'll kind of start working on going more into the boondocking section in section 3. And that will talk more about solar and lithium and what's going to be really asked from your batteries based on those things. So again, as always, if you feel I missed anything or I still didn't answer your questions about certain subject about batteries, please don't hesitate to ask questions. Also, keep in mind that this is only the first of another 2 to 3 more segments on batteries. I really couldn't cover 100% of what I wanted to cover in one video because you'd be sitting here for 2-3 hours. Okay, so I want to save you and spare you from that. So next time there'll be some practical hands-on applications and things about showing you different types of battery types and going through how to wire them, what not to do, what to do, and various other types of things. We'll have some good practical demonstrations. Again, thank you for joining for another Maintenance Monday, and we hope to see you next week. Enjoy the journey.